The Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast is proudly sponsored by New Vision.
My team, kinda power. I love the power. I love the power.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Big Footy Port Adelaide podcast, a show about all things Port Adelaide Footy Club. I'm your host, Macca 19, and joining me as always, as co-host, we've got Fishing Rick. How are you, mate?
Mate, I'm pretty good.
That's the way.
A little bit sad, but I'm overcoming the sadness of what could have been after watching the weekend.
Yeah, that's it.
So now we move on to 2015.
We do, absolutely. And for the first time on the podcast, one of our long-term posters on Big Footy, we're talking with Bomber Clifford.
G'day.
How you going?
I'm good, very good.
That's
as Rick said, a little bit sad, but the sadness is worn off now. We're talking about trades. You almost get the feeling we're already started 2015, which is good to see.
Absolutely. Well, look, first and foremost, before we get started, I'll find out a little bit about how you came to support Port Adelaide, mate.
Well, it's I grew up down south, so I was surrounded by Sturt supporters, South supporters, and for some strange reason, Glenelg supporters. Yep. And I remember as a kid asking my nana who she supported, and I reckon I would have been 5 or 6 at the time, and she told me some story about how she liked watching Jeff Motley play. So that's sort of where I first came to be a Port supporter.
Yep.
The first ever game I went to as a kid, I think I was taken by my dad and my grandpa, was the 1979 Grand Final against South. And I have no recollection of it other than that date and that opponent. But yeah, pretty much stuck. I've never supported any other team other than a brief period as a North Melbourne supporter when I lived in Melbourne in the late 80s and early 90s.
Fair enough.
And that was primarily because of that memory of Blight's torpedo, and that was one of those things that stuck in my mind as a kid. So when you get that inevitable question in Melbourne, who do you support? You go, oh, well, apart from Port, it's North Melbourne. So that changed pretty quickly.
Yep.
It's pretty obvious who my favourite player was back then. I thought he's one of those guys that just appealed to me. I think he was all parts tough, naughty, cheeky, mischievous, and pretty skillful, I thought. Well, as a kid, I did.
Yep. Absolutely. And your favourite match?
Favourite match? Geez, that's hard to remember. I mean, pretty much my favourite match ever, apart from winning the 2004 Grand Final, was that last final round game against Brisbane. I think it was 2002.
Yep.
That was just intense. Like, loved the whole game, loved it from start to finish. I was sitting in a box with a lot of Brisbane supporters, so that probably added to the pleasure. All
right, well, let's have a quick chat about the Grand Final. I'm not sure anyone really saw this coming. Hawthorn with a huge victory by 63 points. Outside of the first 10 minutes, Sydney were never really in the hunt at all.
It was amazing, wasn't it? It was, like you said, no one saw it coming. I thought Sydney was probably going to be the dominant team, but Hawthorn just came out hungry, didn't they?
They did. I have not seen Sydney get that thrashed in the midfield for probably 4 or 5 years.
I'm going to be really boring here. I hardly watched the game.
Yep.
I was at a function with a group of mates. We're just sitting around having a barbecue and drinking beers, and I think we turned off after about 10 minutes and just thought this is not even worth watching. Started to catch up a bit at the end of the third quarter when it was blowing out. Thinking, could they get more than 119 points in front? But yeah, it was a pretty lacklustre game, I thought. I mean, unless you're a Hawks supporter.
Yeah.
But I had no emotional investment in this game whatsoever, which is unusual.
No, that's right. I think there was a time in the second quarter where Hawthorn were just piling on the goals, and you thought, oh, just keep going. please just keep going. Go for 120. Whatever you do, go for the 20-goal win. But Sydney sort of did a good job in I guess, shutting down the margin and keeping it kind of respectable, I guess.
They're just harder at the body, harder at the contest, and they obviously just wanted it more. I mean, obviously they're two great sides and, very, very skillful, but Sydney just seemed lethargic from the moment they came out, and a couple of players I thought got a bit exposed, such as Jeddah. He didn't look convincing at all, did he?
No, Jeddah had a shocker. Kieran Jack had a shocker. Jared McVeigh didn't do much at all. Outside of Buddy Franklin and Josh Kennedy, they were probably the only two, I guess, senior players that really stood up for Sydney. As I said before, I mean, I just haven't seen their midfield get that spanked in a very long time. It was just the definition of spectating. They were just sitting back and waiting for someone else to do something. And, Hawthorn just lapped it up. They were winning the contested ball and finding so much space on the outside. And they were hitting their targets again. It was great football to watch in a grand final, I think.
You did get the sense that Hawks had set themselves up this year to have a very dominant finals campaign. They didn't seem to put a foot wrong, apart from maybe the last 10 minutes of the prelim final.
Yeah. No, that's right. And it could well be their last or, maybe second last attempt at a premiership win. I mean, I think they've got something like 8 players over the age of 30 on their list, so they are getting on a little bit in terms of their list age. Certainly still a lot of talent there. But yeah, they're just a great football club. I think they've won more premierships by quite a long way in the last sort of 30 or 40 years.
No, they have. I think they're sprouting off the stats of 18 grand finals and 12 grand final wins in the last 50 years. So, they've been a juggernaut in the competition. I think what I saw from Hawthorn was back when they were struggling, they weren't afraid, or they're not afraid to take advantage of any loophole or rule in the system, and and also pilfer from other clubs. And I mean, that's just not a dig for them having a go at us, but they were smart. They went and looked at what the top team was doing and tried to get IP from that and learnt from that, plus taking advantage of the rules that were in place at the time, and they've been able to move with it. So, they picked up some very, very good players, and now they're able to just churn and regenerate their list a little bit. So it'll be interesting to see how long they can keep it going for.
Or even getting Clarkson when they did. It seemed to be a good move to create that catalyst to build a good culture around their team. It's been very impressive to watch it happen.
So where do you think they sit in amongst the other two fantastic eras of the modern AFL era? I'm talking about, obviously, the Brisbane three-peat teams and obviously Geelong. I mean, Hawthorn have won, 3 premierships from 4 grand finals in the last 7 years, so they've got to be up there.
Definitely up there. And you'd be hard-pressed to not have them as a favourite for next year either.
Yeah.
Like, even as you said, with some of their ageing list, I really can't see them dropping down that much. It's actually quite scary how potent they were this final series, I thought.
Yep.
And I think it was testament to us that we got so close to them in that prelim final.
Yeah, eventually, though, Father Time comes up, and even if you keep regenerating or finding new players, there's always a couple of key stakeholders with any team which sort of keeps the fabric of that team together. And Luke Hodge is probably one of those players. So you probably find with maybe Clarkson going eventually, or a Luke Hodge or whatever retiring. That's usually when the ethos of the team can probably change a little bit. But I mean, I said on the boards this week, Macca, in a way, it's a shame that the competition isn't equal, because if you think of the Brisbane three-peat, they had the salary cap concessions. Hawthorn took advantage of the priority picks to get 3 picks in the top 7, which was a massive advantage. I mean, we'd be loving that probably 2 years ago, and what we could have done. And I guess Geelong, for me, they had they had the father-son, but I mean that's not really exploiting anything. So, and then you got Sydney with the Kohler. So, I mean, if you look at history, you'd say Brisbane is probably the best because to win 3 in a row is amazing and very difficult to do. But my logic is that out of that, I would still class probably Geelong as the best at this point in time, only because they had no salary cap concessions. They didn't have any priority picks. They were able to develop their players, and they created a strong culture. And then you can chuck a blanket over the other ones, but they're all great sides.
Yeah, it's crazy. I like Geelong. Geelong would be my pick. I think they set a standard that other people were trying to emulate. Other clubs were trying to emulate. It was probably the most dominant 3 years I think I've ever seen of a single football club. I think didn't they have some ridiculous win-loss record over 2 or 3 seasons?
They're certainly the most winningest team of all time, I think.
I love that word, winningest.
Winningest, it's a good one.
I can't wait to wear that team.
Well, that's right. Well, look, on the topic of recruits, there's a big one coming our way by the looks of it. It looks like Paddy Ryder from Essendon has nominated Port Adelaide as his destination club. And to me, this is probably the biggest recruit we've had since Gavin Wanganeen.
Bigger than Hardwick?
I think bigger than Hardwick, yep, absolutely. I think the difference between guys like Pickett and Hardwick, even though they were former All-Australian players, they were probably not at their peak when they came to us, whereas Paddy Ryder's coming off his best ever season. So it's amazing that he's coming here, I think.
I have to admit, I haven't seen him play much this year. I did see a bit of him last year because I had a mate who's an Essendon supporter and was watching games with him. But I reckon he's a doozy. I'm glad we seem to be picking the right type of players for the club culture as well, which is very impressive. Even the picking up White and Polek in the last off season, they just seem to fit perfectly as as footballers, but also as men within the team. And I think that's that's got to be put down to people like Rhodey and the rest of the team behind the trades.
Yeah. Well, I think credit's got to go to Paul Vandenberg and Gavin Wanganeen for getting in his ear and getting him over here. I think that's fantastic. There's been some really good debate on the forum about what we should give up for him. A lot of people think that a first-round pick is the way to go, which obviously makes sense for the type of player and quality of player that he is. Others are saying maybe that's a bit too much considering he's got the possible ASADA penalties hanging over his head. What would you guys trade for him?
I think pick 16 is good.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm not keen on a player.
I think it's obvious, really.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not keen on a player at all. And I would really like to have some assurity about what the ASADA penalty is going to be, because I'd hate to be flicking away pick 16 for Ryder and then find out that he's going to be out for 2 years and he'll be coming out getting close to 29.
Yeah.
That's a massive risk. And there'd have to be, I would imagine, some assurity from the AFL that if that was to happen, that maybe we get our pick reinstated, because if it's buyer beware, that's a massive risk to play. But at the same time, I'm not convinced about coughing up a player either. I think pick 16 in its own right is probably just about right for me.
That when that was first proposed, just the pick 16, it sort of felt right to me. But I can't remember who it is on the forum. They always say if the trade feels like you're hurting, that's probably about right. Yeah. But I just, all the names that get floated like Young and Moore, I can't get my head around losing a player like that as part of a trade to get Ryder. But having said that, it's these types of trades that will definitely put us in the front running for next year.
Yeah. As I said on the forum a couple of days ago, we've probably overpaid for Pickett. We probably overpaid for Wakeland as well with pick 4. And maybe with Hardwick as well, giving up 2 picks. But in the end, no one cares if you overpay for a player. If you're getting that sort of value for that sort of quality. I mean, sometimes when you're knocking on a premiership door like we're doing at the moment, you need to sort of overpay to get those missing pieces, I think.
Well, you do, but you don't. You don't have to be desperate and overpaying either. So you don't need to rush in high straight from the get-go. I mean, there's still that rumour floating around about Jeremy Cameron as well. How much value we put in it's is another thing. But if you ask me, I mean, I'm sort of derailing the Ryder talk here, but I would find Jeremy Cameron is more important to us than Paddy Ryder, and I'd probably rather use pick 16 and try harder for Cameron, and then if we need a backup ruck, go for another backup ruck instead. But so I'd hate to be overcommitting way too early and paying too much. And it's
I think it's like anything. I doubt we'd overcommit. I think our starting price will be a second round pick, and we'll go from there.
I'd hope so. I'd really hope so, because I think there's maybe some great opportunities for us this draft period. I think there's a few bigger name players for a change that might be looking at Port Adelaide as an attractive destination.
Yeah.
It's great, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic.
It is great, and all credit to everyone involved that they've been able to turn it around so quickly to make that being the case. And it's probably time, we thought we timed out at the worst time to bottom out, but we seem to be peaking out almost at the right time as well now.
Mm.
So it sort of swings and roundabouts a little bit. But what do you guys think about this Jeremy Cameron rumour?
I don't put much credence in it. I think we'd have to pay too much to get him. I agree he'd be a massive win for us in terms of what we need. But I think the amount you'd have to pay him and also what you'd have to pay GWS to get him doesn't seem to fit with the method that the Port guys are using when they're planning their trades. Ken to me seems to, it's not quite the Moneyball theory, but he's picking guys that fit the culture more so and are needs based on what they can bring to the team, rather than just buying in a big star. Like, to me, that sort of runs counter to the whole way in which he's building this team.
I think our best hope for getting Jeremy Cameron is if he nominates us next year when he's out of contract, and we can give them a sort of take it or leave it offer.
Interesting. It is an interesting time. What I am seeing through Ken Hinckley's words, though, is that you can see where Geelong's ethos through their dominant reign, where a lot of their material came from, so to speak. What's happened at Geelong is almost, word to word what's happening with Ken Hinckley now. And he's not, as you pointed out, Bomber, he's not willing to sacrifice team for individual. And that's why all these names that get thrown out with any hypothetical trade from some of our posters, I just don't think it's going to happen. I can't see him trading probably anyone from 1 through to 26 on our list unless they specifically say, I want to leave this footy team, because he's been so passionate about his support for the team and for the boys, and that money isn't the culture. I'd be shocked if he tapped Bobby on the shoulder and said, mate, we want you to go for Jeremy Cameron to come in, because that would just... Yeah. It would undo his whole ethos.
Yeah, it would kill the club. Yeah. That's why Paddy Ryder fits so well, is because we can get him most likely for just a draft pick, and we don't have to screw over the rest of the team to get him, which is great. And obviously there's talk about a lot of other players coming here as well. I mean, there's talk about Luke Loudon from Hawthorn. There's some murmurs about Sam Day from Gold Coast and Tyrone Vickery from Richmond as well. So we've definitely got options there.
I'd love Tyrone. I reckon he'd be great.
It would be good. I think he would suit our club very, very well. I think we'd be able to get him on the right track. I don't think he'd be worthwhile after getting Patrick Ryder as well.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where he'd fit, but certainly if the Paddy Ryder deal, for whatever reason, falls through, he would be my next target for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you, Macca. I don't. If we recruit him, I don't see how we could entertain keeping him happy if we take Ryder as well.
No,
it would.
That's right.
It just wouldn't really fit. So
that's why I think Luke Loudon's probably a better fit, because he would be coming here knowing that he is kind of a backup player, and he would get opportunities. Obviously, it depends on how Jared Redden's going and what we end up doing with Redden, whether we delist him and put him on the rookie list or keep him. Keep him on the senior list or not. But I think if we do end up getting Ryder and Loudon, that would improve our squad dramatically.
I don't know much about Loudon.
Well, he's only played the one game, but he's a ready-to-go ruckman. He's 205 centimetres, can play up forward as well. So he's quite an interesting prospect in his own right.
And he's been on the list for 7 years, hasn't he?
6, I think, yeah.
6 years, so
he's 23, 24, ready to go.
It's interesting that he hasn't played really any games at all, though. That's and to be behind Segler as well sort of says, well, how good is he? I mean, are we just rolling the dice? We're just trying to get someone that's maybe a little bit capable to sit on the list as a backup.
I don't think he'd come here and become a star, but I think he could be able to play a part.
I always think of our Barnaby French, Kane Ackland, Barry Brooks sort of shades.
Yeah.
But I mean, we need another depth ruckman. So if he's willing to cover here, knowing that that's the case, and there might be opportunities, and as Ford pointed out during the week, he probably is fighting with Loeb a little bit, because Ryder's probably going to be more predominantly ruck, and with Redden not going to be ready and Renouf gone, if he does come in, well, he is almost a direct substitute straight away.
Yeah.
I thought that was a very good observation by young Ford Fairlane, the youngster on our forum.
Talking about Renouf, obviously we've delisted 4 players last week. Obviously, Dom Casisa, he retired earlier in the season after 228 games. One of the real heroes of Port Adelaide, a former captain and a premiership player. And we've also delisted Brent Renouf after 16 games in 3 years. Constant injuries have curtailed his career a little bit. We've also got rid of Campbell Heath after 12 games, all in 2013. He had his 3rd knee reconstruction this year. And we say goodbye to Cameron Hitchcock after 35 games in 5 years.
Cameron, what a legend! He retweeted my tweet to him. So what a good bloke. But no, he's well. I mean, obviously, I'm sure all of us are very grateful for their contributions to our footy club. And I mean, there's a few there that are very unlucky, especially Campbell Heath and Cam Hitchcock, which everyone's pretty harsh on Cam. But I always saw a natural footballing ability in Cam, and he did have the skill sets to maybe become a stronger, capable player, but he just couldn't avoid those injuries.
No,
he always looked like he was going to break in half to me. Like he just seems so fragile on the field.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of talent, Cameron Hitchcock. He's super quick. He's got decent skills. He can kick a goal. He can run through the midfield. He gets a lot of the ball. He's a very, very good SANFL player. I just don't think he's got that body for AFL footy, and I think it tells that probably the last 4 games he played, he pinged a hamstring at AFL level, and you just can't create a career out of that, really.
No, not really. I mean, and every time I watched him, you just sort of had no conviction that he could last a game, which is a bit of a shame because, like I said, he had natural footballing ability. He could find the ball at SANFL level, and he could find the goal. So, and he seemed to be one of those players that had a strong bond with a lot of the players in the core group as well. So it's a bit of a shame. I mean, probably Renouf's the most disappointing one for me because he came across what I thought was being a really aggressive, strong player, but I never saw that in his play.
No, I mean, he had injury issues of his own as well. I think we picked him up knowing that he had a few injuries and a bit of a hip problem. But obviously, he was a premiership player at Hawthorn. He came here, I think we were expecting him to become first ruck. Obviously, Lobie hadn't broken through at that stage yet, and Redden still hadn't debuted. We'd just gotten rid of Brogan. So he was coming here to play games, and he never really sort of got that run of games going.
I thought the best use of him was that Fremantle game this year, where he was pretty much just used as a battering ram against the Giant.
Yeah.
So yeah, I felt for Renouf because I happened to meet him once, and I thought he was a really great guy, good guy to chat with. Did seem like a bit of the gentle giant in some ways. And it was disappointing because I just thought he would have just been the right thing we needed at the right time.
Yeah. Well, we needed an experienced ruck. We ended up trading a second-round pick for him. Hawthorn picked Bradley Hill with that pick, so I think they probably ended up with the better end of that deal.
Absolutely.
And Campbell Heath, I mean, as I've said numerous times on this podcast, I'm a massive fan of Campbell Heath. I think he's got a huge amount of talent. He reads the play so well, but 3 knee reconstructions, it's just a real pity that he couldn't get his body right.
I thought he was great last year. He was one of those newcomers that I really took a shine to. I thought he played really well last season, and it was disappointing to see that he just, again couldn't get himself ready for this season. And seeing him go down in that Sandford granny, I just thought, oh, you poor bastard. You just knew it was the end.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think he just needs to go away and probably just play at a second-tier level, just get his head right, try and get confidence in the body, and you never know, another opportunity might come back for him anyway, because like you said, he is a very capable player.
Yeah.
How old is he?
I think 23? He's only 23, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so he's still young.
Yeah, he's
still
young
got time
enough.
on his side.
Absolutely. I think the problem is, if I was him anyway, I just don't know if I'd want to keep putting myself through the risk of going out and thinking, oh, shit's my knee going to go again. Sometimes you just got to go, enough's enough, and probably just bite the bullet and say maybe it's not my thing.
Well, there was talk earlier in the year where it was said that he was thinking of giving it away anyway, so maybe it was a mutual agreement to part company.
We got the power to win, power to rule, come on, for Adelaide aggression, we are the power from...
Well, let's go on to the main reason for this podcast this week. We're going to do a bit of a season review, a bit of an overview of 2014, which was a bloody enjoyable year, I must say. We won 14 games for the year. We won 2 more games and finished 27% better off than we did in 2013. We kicked 16 more goals, conceded 52 less, which was fantastic. We actually conceded the least amount of points in the club's AFL era, which is fantastic, I thought.
I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, our best ever defence.
Not bad for an attacking coach.
Absolutely. So we finished we were 2 games clear on top of the ladder halfway through the year. I guess the first question is, where did it go wrong? And do we see this season as a success or a bit of a failure?
Oh, has to
Tough
be
question.
a success. Has to be a success. I mean, we improved from last year. No one really voted with any conviction that we would make the finals in the media, and even on our own forum, people were very 50-50 on what the results were going to be. And I think, the noticeable mid-season slump did come with young bodies, which were obviously being protected for a strong finals campaign. And boy, they played a bloody strong finals campaign. We can't complain about the finals campaign other than not winning against Hawthorn, but Hawthorn showed they're a bloody great side. So
absolutely,
the boys got a lot to take away from it, I thought, and as a supporter, I couldn't really ask for too much more outside of winning a premiership.
Well, what were your pre-season predictions? I know for me, I just wanted a home final. I thought if we could get a home final, that would be a big improvement on what was a good starting point in 2013, and we got that.
Yeah, I had us finishing around 5th or 6th, so I was quietly surprised that we were gunning for 4th in the last game of the round. A bit disappointed we lost to Freo in that game. I thought, it was just we seemed to be playing well and we almost had it, and then that 9-goal burst came from out of nowhere, and it was just, what? I haven't seen this all year. Maybe we are, you start to have those doubts. Maybe we are the outsiders here. But it was great going back to Freo, going back to Perth and beating Freo on their home turf. I thought that was one of the highlights of the year for me.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was looking for this season to be an improvement on last season, and 2013 there was an excessive amount of games where we disappeared for considerable chunks of a game, which resulted in losses. And even though that happened a few times, like that 9-goal run, it didn't really happen that often this year. So that, for me, that was a significant improvement this year as a footy side. Probably if we're going to look a little bit critical, we did seem to struggle with the weather, that period where we lost, where, especially in the more slippery conditions, where we didn't seem to have a fallback game plan until probably the Gold Coast game, where we went, shit, we just got to kick it long. But we seemed to be playing that over possession game, and we got caught up in the over handballing too often and not really maybe adjusting to conditions fast enough.
No, you're right. We almost seemed a little bit stubborn at times in sticking with what the coaches wanted to do as their plan A, and not really being, flexible in adjusting to those sort of conditions, especially against Essendon. I think that was one which really got away, maybe against Collingwood as well. But as you said, Rick, I think the start of the season was fantastic. Not many people expected us to start the season too well. A lot of people expected us to be maybe 1-5 and up against it. But to beat Carlton away, to thrash Adelaide, and then beat West Coast away, and then also Geelong for the first time in what seemed like about 2 decades was a fantastic start to the season.
Yeah, it was great. It was a good run there for a while. I loved the showdown. That first game at Adelaide Oval was just it was great to blow them off the park.
It was.
And I thought that really announced the team. As good as the win against Carlton was, I think that showdown one was a bit of a pressure release, that you knew that this was almost going to be a good year for us.
Yep. Well, look, where did we improve? I'll start the ball rolling. I thought our bowl movement was better than it was in 2013, especially by hand. I thought our handballing skills for much of the season were as good as any team in the competition. I thought our defensive structures were fantastic, not allowing inside 50s to the opposition. I think Jackie Homsch, the improvement in him, and also having that third tall defender in the side improved us out of sight. And obviously the natural improvement in the games of Jasper Pittard and Broadbent, and also the introduction of Jarman Impey as well. I thought our delivery inside 50 was better than it was last year. And we also became league leaders in things like bounces and inside 50s. Clearances were very good. Marks inside 50, we always found a lot of space. And as you said, Rick, staying in the contest was something that we really did struggle with in 2013. And we only really once allowed that big run of goals, as you said, against Freo in the last minor round game. And we never really got blown away by any opponent this year either. I think our biggest losing margin was 26 points, which is pretty good, I would have thought.
Yeah, I really liked the way we had an ability to maintain the striking distance from our opponents, like that we never really let anybody get away. And getting even towards the end of the season, where you get that, build that expectation up as a supporter that it doesn't matter what's going on in the game, and no matter how frustrated you are with what's going on the field, you knew that we were still in it, and I haven't felt that for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, what was it? 10 games for 99 points against, or total for loss. So 9.9 average. So shows that we're right in it.
Yeah.
It is incredible. So it just shows how close we were to maybe being there on the final day. But I guess for me, the highlight was probably the defence. So I thought the defence stood up in our losses and also in our victories. And as you pointed out, Macca, with the drive from the smalls, but also the defensive abilities from the talls, and Homps really stood up and improved this year. Trengove and Paddy took it right up there. And I mean, Paddy probably wasn't going to get all Australian, but he could have been pretty close to have been.
Jeez, I thought he had a cracker year this year. I loved watching him play this year. Just took the game on, and almost a little bit. I saw a little bit like a little bit of Pittard in the way that he was playing. Well, as much as you can see Pittard in a guy the size of Alapati, but he just it was that braveness that they were talking about earlier in the year. They wanted the players to take the game on. I found he was, if I had to list the top three players, my favourite players this year and the season they had, he'd definitely be in there.
But, yeah, so for me, the defence, most definitely, and our run and our skill, our ball use. I mean, that Adelaide showdown, as you pointed out, and the Brisbane game and then the Richmond game, and even Hawthorn 2 weeks ago, it was just pure football, especially, I mean, that's one of my vivid recollections of the Adelaide game, was just like everything was just so pure and crisp and fast, and it was the most precise football I've seen from a Port Adelaide football side in a long time, and well, probably ever, really, because I mean, they're different eras, but when I compare it back to the 80s and 90s and to now, the skills were just amazing, and they were just so clean, and it was like the ball was just stuck on the end of the hand, and the boy, especially Pollock. I mean, Pollock's first showdown game was amazing, and and I guess that's where we improved a little bit this year with smart, clever recruiting.
I think we're definitely,
like Pollock.
Yeah, no doubt. I think we're definitely the most attractive team to watch in the competition in a year where we've played so well. I've really, really struggled to watch any other game that's not involving Port Adelaide for probably the first time ever. I think the standard across the competition has been relatively poor and quite boring a lot of games. But with Port Adelaide, we're always going to bring it. We're super skillful, super quick. We've got so many sort of showtime players that can do the incredible big marks, big goals. It's been a real enjoyment, a real joy to watch Port Adelaide this year.
Oh, definitely, and even things like players like Jake Need coming in the finals. It was amazing to watch a guy that sort of had intermittent games throughout the year or towards the tail end of the year, and then just come in for the finals and blitz it. He's amazing to watch. Absolutely. Apart from when he's up against a 6-foot defender in the forward 50.
Not wrong. Well, where did we struggle this year, Rick?
Oh, as I said, we still struggled with probably having a plan B, which could be a result of still having a relatively young side. We also probably struggled for having a little bit of lack of depth, which was, if I remember rightly, going back to the beginning of our podcast session this year, that was always going to be a concern for me. And as you pointed out, Jacko and Bobby going down really did expose us a little bit there, our lack of depth. So they're probably the two things that the boys need to work on in the pre-season, is having a plan B, because obviously the team's going to come again next year harder and smarter about flooding our contest and trying to get the contested ball, because I remember you talking right in the back of my mind over and over again, Macca, centre clearances, we're getting smashed. So, and Phil Walsh is a great senior assistant. So, we need to get those centre clearances sorted out, which will also help us maintain control of a game a little bit better as well. So
Yep.
they're probably the two aspects that I'll be looking for. And obviously the club's trying to target the recruiting now. So hopefully that will improve our depth also.
No doubt. Yeah, certainly for me, the number one thing where we struggled was centre clearances, as you said, Rick. I think clearances around the ground at the stoppages were pretty good, but we always were forced to throw extra players at the stoppage around the ground to try and create extra numbers and get the clearance by stealth, I guess you'd say. Whereas always at the centre clearance where it was 4-on-4, we were struggling all year to get those centre clearances, and it really cost us a couple of games, I thought, and cost us the chance of getting momentum when you're getting a bit of a run on, and the opposition's just able to waltz it out of the middle time and time again. That was probably one of the most disappointing aspects of the year for me. As a bit of a buy side with that, I think our forward structure, especially through the second half of the season, was a bit of a mess. Again, I think that was due to having to throw extra flankers into the midfield to try and win that bowl. Obviously, we lacked adequate cover, especially for the ruck, key defence and key forwards. All our tolls, our backup tolls just didn't come on, or they got injured, which was very disappointing. And I think our goal kicking, our ability to convert in front of goal at pressure times, was deplorable at stages of the year.
Yeah, that's the one for me, goal kicking. I thought we lost some very winnable games due to poor goal kicking, and I'll include the prelim in that. And it's not like we were just having these crazy snaps on goal, that some of them are fairly straightforward shots on goal.
No, that's right. 13-16 to 15-7 in the prelim, you lose by 3 points. That really hurts. You look at the second showdown, we kicked 10 goals 16. We lost by 20 points. We kicked 7 goals 18 and lost by 2 points against Essendon. It certainly wasn't a feature of our year.
But I think that comes down to your point about forward structure as well, Macca. I think our delivery into positions where they're not really favourable for goal kicking. I mean, that's not always. We did miss a lot of sitters as well, but we were taking a lot of difficult shots at goal at times too. So maybe we weren't being as courageous as what we needed to be with where we were kicking the ball. And there seemed to be a lot of times where we sort of just got sucked into trying to drop the ball on top of the forward's head to maybe just try and get a big specky or whatever, instead of kicking the ball to position and making the forward run onto the ball. And again, that's where we need a good strong pre-season in training the boys to hit it to the right spot.
There was a noted change, I thought, halfway through the year, where the first half of the season we were playing a lot through the corridor, and we were getting a lot of very good easy shots on goal, I guess you'd say, from sort of 20 metres out in front. Once opposition teams worked out that they need to stop us going through the corridor, it was almost like watching latter-day Choco, as I've said a couple of times this year, where we were just sort of hoofing it into the pocket and hoping for the best.
Yeah, well, what do you do though? I mean, that's where you need that Ryder, that Cameron, or whoever, I guess, to have that confidence. But again, I mean, Ryder's a little bit different because he's so tall, but Cameron's not a player where you just lob it on his head either.
No.
The forwards, you need to kick it in front and give them an opportunity. And I mean, that's what makes Hawthorn so good. I mean, have a think about how many high bombs in the grand final or even against the prelim did they kick to their forwards, like recklessly just bombing it into the forward 50.
Yeah.
Not many that I can think of. They are precise, accurate and methodical with how they deliver the ball to their forward targets. And that's where we just need to become a bit smarter.
Well, what were the biggest surprises this year?
Matty White.
Yep, I like that.
He was a bit of a Matty Who for me.
He was great, though. He's great to watch.
He was electrifying. I mean, he personified our speed fetish that we had in our quick ball movement. Some of the goals that he kicked were amazing. I mean, I was a rank amateur footballer at best, but one of my deficiencies was even at a slow jog, I couldn't kick a football. I mean, I had to be stationary to kick a football. So, I mean, I can really appreciate how this guy at full tilt can still kick a ball like he does. Is just amazing. But his courage just to, in any game at any time, just to take on his opponent and run, that epitomises what Ken Hinkley wants in the team.
Yep.
His ability to accelerate is incredible. You can tell he's going to do it. He just does the little glance over the shoulder and then takes off. I think I only saw him get pinged once for running too far. I think that was against Freo, but the other times it was just, you could see him turn his head, slight glance, bang, I'm off. And he pretty much just burned them off right there and then.
I think probably the biggest surprise for me was Jared Polek. Obviously, he came here. You didn't really know what to expect. A super talented kid who went very, very early in the draft, hadn't played a lot of games for Brisbane, came here with noted sort of issues. He got blasted on his first training session. You thought, God, have we given up too much for him? But right from the first trial game against the Crows, he just went bang and didn't really look back at any stage during the year. He had a massive season, and I think he's improved our side dramatically.
Mm. His delivery is just superb. Some of those little popped up kicks that it looks like he's looking at somebody else, and they just land straight in someone else's lap. It's just amazing.
Yeah,
he's
immediately become the best kick in our side, which is fantastic. I think the other surprise is probably Jack Homsch, with just how good he was this year. And he just added so much to our defensive structure. It was fantastic. I think another big surprise was Robbie Gray becoming the best player in the league. I don't think anyone really expected that to happen, but geez, what a season he had.
Settle down, Macca. You're just getting carried away now. We're not doing player reviews.
I know.
Yeah, and you're missing the most important person in our team for the whole year.
No, here we go.
What about Pitta?
Bring on the Jasper love.
Oh,
I have to say, Rick, I'm with you. I love Jasper. I reckon he's great.
I had to retrain the whole big footy board this year. Right?
Well, look, Jasper was my biggest disappointment, to be honest.
This year?
No, I'm just joking.
He just wants to be death by 50 lashes. But everyone was raining on the Jasper parade, and there's a few of us that were sticking fat with him, and knew that the good was going to come. And by the end of the season, there wasn't many people questioning Jasper and what his role in the side was anymore. And I thought he had a fantastic final series, and he epitomises again, like Matty White, what Ken Hinkley's game plan is, and that's run, carry, dare, back yourself in. And
exactly.
he's only
Take the game on.
Yeah, and as a young kid, well, Porsche will argue he's not young anymore, but as a young kid, he's still getting there, and he's one of those players I think that's going to be fundamental for us in 2015. That's why I nearly passed out when I saw his name as trade bait today.
Yeah, well, that's not going to happen. There's no way he's going to get traded. But, look,
No.
I think another big surprise for me was Jarman Impey to come in. I don't think I really had all that much expectation that he would play a lot of games, but for him to come into the side, basically a top four side all year, to cement his spot as that sort of player, as a shutdown defender in his first season, I thought he played admirably well and was pretty unlucky not to get a final.
Yeah, I was surprised he didn't get into the final teams. I thought he played great, and that some of the highlights, that pick up and goal, I can't remember who we played. Was it at Hawthorn, against Hawthorn? And he streaming into the northern end, gathered the ball and kicked the goal. That was one of the most sublime acts I think I've seen in footy in the last couple of years. Yep. Yeah, I'd also add one of the biggest surprises for me was the attendances at our home games.
Yep.
That just blew me away. It's great though. Creates a great atmosphere. Even some of the lower attended games, we still managed to create a bit of atmosphere pre-game and during the game. I think the Bulldogs one was probably the most boring game, but all the rest I thought were really good games to attend.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, be prepared for your mind to be blowing next year, because I reckon next year it's only going to get better. I think we're going to be one of the hits of the year next year, and everyone's going to jump on the bandwagon. So I reckon.
You mean they haven't already?
Yeah.
I reckon there'll be more, mate. I reckon there'll be more, and hopefully we'll also be rewarded by the AFL with a half decent fixture too.
Let's hope so. Fingers crossed. Well, look, what were the biggest disappointments for 2014?
Can I say Trig going to Carlton?
Yes. Yes. Never forget. Rest in peace, Triggy. We still miss you.
Look, it's got to be Butcher for me.
Yeah.
I had high hopes for him this year, and he's exactly what we needed, I think. We needed a player of his size and ilk to stand up. So I don't know what's going on, but it does seem to be a mental thing. That not being selected for the Brisbane game seemed to be a bit of a sliding doors moment for him. So it'd be interesting to see whether he actually does come back and play a game again for us next year, or whether he even gets traded this year. But I hope he does stay, because I really, when he does play well, I like the way he plays. I just would like to see him kick some goals.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess he was my biggest disappointment for the year as well. Not necessarily all because of him, but just the fact that he only played 3 games for the season. I thought, this was his first full pre-season. Everyone said, oh, well, just wait till he has a full pre-season and then you can judge him. Well, he got one. Everyone expected big things this year. He started the season reasonably well. He had a very, very good showdown in round 2. Got dropped after round 3 and wasn't seen again. Had some pretty good SANFL form at times during the year, but really fell away quite dramatically in that second half of the season. And then he got sick. And as you said, I guess we're all left wondering, will he ever make it?
Yeah, that drop chest mark against North Melbourne in the centre of the ground, it was almost, you see that happen and you think Ken's just not going to wear that. He's not going to allow that to happen.
No, that's right.
And pretty much that sealed his fate for the season.
Yeah. I think the other one is another player, and also from the 2009 draft, was Andrew Moore. I had him as my player to watch for 2014, and unfortunately it was injuries that really curtailed his season. I thought he had a really good pre-season, actually quite a great pre-season I thought his form was, and then he got injured in that last pre-season game against St Kilda, and got a bit of a stinger on the shoulder. He missed a lot of games to start the season. He came back, hurt his shoulder again, missed another 5 games, and he just couldn't get any sort of run of form going, and he looked pretty good in the SANFL games he played, but when he got games at AFL level, I thought he looked timid at times and unwilling to use his body in the same way that he did in 2013.
No, it's fair call.
He is one I'd love to see come on. He's got, his size and physique. It's, I think I mentioned in the forum, he's a thoroughbred. Yep. It'll be, if he can get that mind, get over the mind games and get himself adjusted to AFL, the speed of the AFL games, I think he'll be a good one for us. And I'd hate to lose him to another team and see him excel somewhere else.
Yeah. What about you, Rick?
To me, it's more all our experienced reserve players probably didn't take their opportunities when they were presented. So your Mason Shaw, who's getting a little bit of experience now, John Butcher, Aaron Young, Ben Newton, Andrew Moore, all of those players in the reserves, they really just didn't push their case, which I've been banging on about for a while now, getting in the senior side and just dominating and going, this is it, I'm here, I want to stay here. They've all had a few opportunities and they just didn't really take it. And it was, this year could be make or break for some of those players. And, those players could have been the difference when we did have some years, to maybe winning a couple extra games. And, it probably didn't happen that way. So which comes back to my earlier point about being exposed with a bit of depth. So, really the nuts and bolts for those boys, if they are on our list next year, will be 2015, have to be their year to show something, or they're probably going to be in big trouble.
Yeah, no, that's a fair call. I think Aaron Young was probably the best of those fringe guys. Certainly in the first half of the season, he was playing some really good footy, but he fell away a little bit. Obviously we tried guys like Sammy Gray and Kane Mitchell for mixed results as well. I guess the other biggest disappointment for me was our run of losing those close games due to poor goal kicking. I think we lost against Sydney, Adelaide, Collingwood and Essendon in the space of about 6 weeks, pretty much solely because of our inability to convert in front of goals. And I think in the end that really cost ourselves a shot at top 4, possibly even top 2 when you think about it, by losing those games that we really could have and probably should have won.
It's that whole could have been scenario, isn't it? The whole sliding doors. But
well, that Sydney game, that first Sydney game, I reckon, was one of those.
Yeah.
It was a cracker game, and I think if we'd managed to scrape over the line there, I don't think we would have. I think that would have given us the self-belief to win a few more of that next run, even without Trengove and Carlisle.
No, we had the last shot of the game.
We did.
So we did have an opportunity to win it, but we didn't take it. We had an opportunity to beat Hawthorn in the preliminary final, but we didn't take that either.
Yep.
So we were able to create those opportunities, but it comes back to that earlier point, we probably didn't execute into a position to give us the best opportunity to actually win the game. Like Andrew Moore's final fling in the prelim where he couldn't spot up the target in the midfield and went over Ollie Wine's head. It's just those little simple things which, with hindsight, make such a difference.
Yep. Look, back to the positives. What were your favourite memories?
Well, easily, there's so many. Like easily, the first showdown. That was an amazing memory. But it seems like it's forever ago. That I almost had to think, was that this year?
No, I agree 100% with that call. I've watched the replay of that recently, and I thought, God, that feels like about 2 years ago now.
I really loved watching the Never Tear Us Apart thing grow at each of the home games.
Yep.
And being a supporter. Look, I'm not one for doing the scarf above my head, but I love it. I love sitting amongst it and doing it and listening to it. I got to meet Dingle twice. That's one of my favourite memories.
Yeah.
But for me, hands down, I reckon the most favourite one was the Richmond elimination final. That the build-up and atmosphere was one of the most amazing things I've ever experienced at a footy game. I loved all the pre-game stuff. Loved the way we demolished them pretty much in the first quarter. That was it, game over. And I also reckon is my tinfoil hat time. I'm not entirely convinced that the prison bars Guernsey situation wasn't a little bit sort of pre-planned. So, and in my opinion, that's great.
I loved us getting recognisable sponsors, which gave our club a bit more credibility. Which wasn't too long ago. We had My ATM and Soaring Securities, and we were a bit of a laughing stock. And now we've got two great brands supporting our club, which gave our supporters a lot of confidence. And I also, my greatest memory is for the season is having excitement back in the football club and on the field. It's, as you said, Macca, you found it uninspiring to watch other games, and we've brought excitement back to our supporters, be it through Bombers' great explanation or description of the pre-game entertainment, or on the field. We're an exciting footy club again, and that's very uplifting for me.
Yep. No, that's right. My favourite's probably that first home game against Adelaide Oval as well. Just the buzz and excitement surrounding that game. and then seeing that awesome pre-game ritual for the first time with the not giving in, followed by a never tear us apart. No one really knew what to do at that point in time, but it was a real organic growth in the never tear us apart thing, and now it's just become this massive, massive thing. It's fantastic. I really enjoyed those triumvirate of wins against Geelong, Freo, and Hawthorn, and ending the hoodoo against those three teams, which I think is quite important. And yeah, look, obviously the first final against Richmond in the Present Bars, and the excitement around that game, and just the way we started that first quarter was just just the most electric I've ever seen Port Adelaide play.
Do you think the club could be missing an opportunity if they can't potentially get maybe in excess to come to do a pre-game one game next year? I just see it'd be just such a magnificent and thing to be able to orchestrate if it could happen.
It'd be pretty good to do it live. Yeah, absolutely. That'd be great.
Mm.
I think you've got to be careful though not to kill it with making it over the top.
Yeah.
I think the beauty of it is that it has happened organically, and being a supporter that's gone to the home games, the first home game, and just kept going and seeing this thing grow and grow and grow, I think that's where its strength is.
Well, look, last question is where can we improve for 2015?
You know what I reckon it is? I reckon it's just plain old experience. I think the experience that the guys would have had this year, not just the finals, but going through that mid-season slump and having their depth tested, is going to give them. It'll help players like Moore make a better decision next year, and getting more games into him next year, and players of his ilk. Chad Wingard, I think, with another pre-season, he'll start to get more consistency. I thought this year, as good as he was, he does tend to fade in and out of games a little bit too easily. So I think it's really just down to, this year we lock it in the bank. We've got that experience. We get another pre-season and bang, off we go again. And I think that's where, apart from some trades of some key players, I think that's where our current squad will get the most of its improvement.
Yeah, junior development for me. We've still got such a young team, so as long as they're not complacent and they work hard to achieve their goals, top four should be calling. As you've seen this week, I've sort of been trying to dilute expectation a little bit, I guess. I think it's probably unhealthy as a supporter base that we just come in already just going, top two. I mean, it's the AFL ain't that easy, and I think we as supporters, we should be hoping and expecting a top four, but that still isn't easy. Things still need to happen right. We need to avoid injuries, and we need to see growth in the Chad Wingards and the Ollie Wines. All of those young players need to take it up another level because everyone else is going to increase another level. And so I'm hoping that the boys come back, work their ass off, which I'm sure they will, and they'll give themselves every opportunity to try and get top four for next year.
Yep. Good call, that one. I think the prelim result's going to sit in their guts for a while, and I think there's some obvious places where we can improve. I think foot skills is definitely one. I think composure with the ball, especially in front of goal, is another where we need to improve. I think we need to get some adequate AFL standard backup in positions like the ruck, key position forward, and key position defence. Obviously, Paddy Ryder is going to help with that dramatically, but also I think improvement in players like Tommy Cleary and Mason Shaw, and Mitch Harvey, and hopefully Johnny Butcher will also help in that as well. It would be great to see someone like Jared Redden play some games next year and get himself fit. And also just natural improvement from the youngsters on our list, guys like Jasper Pittard, Jakey Need, Jared Pollock, Ollie Wines, Chatty Wingard, and also hopefully some debuts for guys like Mason Shaw and Carl Amon as well.
And even players like Brendan Archie, hopefully
definitely
gets another contract. I was really glad to see his improvement in the second half of the year, and this next year will be his year to really push hard to try and get some games and show his worth of a long-term spot on the list.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, it's been a long one. It's been a good one.
It has.
Well, boys, Bomber, thanks for coming on, mate.
No worries. Thanks for asking me.
No worries. We'll get you on again soon.
Fantastic. I'll look forward to listening to it.
That's it. Rick, as always, buddy.
Yes, exciting times. How long we got till draft podcasting, Macca?
It's not long, probably about a month, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Very excited. Looking forward to next week.
That's it.
What are we doing next week?
player reviews for the next few weeks, I think, mate. And then we'll get into some draft specials and some draft reviews, and then we'll look forward to 2015.
Exciting times.
All right, boys.
Great.
Come Port Adelaide.
There